Okay, so we're going to talk about the slope of a line today. You may have already learned this in math class, and that's great, then it's a review. If not, this will be one way to find slope, and we're going to be doing this in science because it's a useful skill to find the relationship between two variables. So your teacher should have handed out a piece of paper that looks like this for you guys to write on, all right? If not, you can pause the video and hand them out now. So let's talk about slope of a line and things you need to remember about graphs. Okay, one of the things you need to remember is which is x and which is y. Okay, this is the x direction and this is the y direction. Okay, so these go up here as positive values, right? And when you're below the axis or to the left, these are negative values. Really, in science, we won't use these, but I'm just doing this because, you do it in math as well. So we might as well not leave it out. All right, now what about coordinates or points? When we pick a point on a graph, okay, it's important to put one letter before the other, okay? So when we label a point, it has two coordinates. The first one is always the x. So you look here and you follow up from the x, and the second value is from the y. And that's how we get the coordinates of a point. There's always two. X is first, separated by a comma y, and we put round brackets around them. Okay? Now, the equation for the slope of a line. Now, in math class, sometimes you can do counting. In science, it's often better if we find points on lines. So there is an equation for the slope of a line. Okay, slope is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And you might be asking yourself, what are those? Well, those are 2 points. The subscripts mean point, okay? So to find slope, you need 2 points. And you're always calculating it, all right? Now, I know I may make this look messy. This is 1 point, this is 1 point, and we have a subtraction sign in between them. So what do the 2 points look like? x1, y1. So the ones belong to 1 point, okay? And then you have a second point somewhere on your graph, x2 and y2. All right, so what I want to do is give you an example because this just looks like a bunch of letters and numbers if you've never done this before, okay? And then today, really, we're just practicing slope. So labeling points using this slope equation, okay? And you have a worksheet to do that will be handed out to you after this one. This is the note. Okay, so let me just draw like that's 1 point and that's 1 point. Now, what do students find confusing about this? Well, you're breaking apart the coordinates, okay? And you have to make sure the y goes on the numerator and the x goes on the denominator at the bottom. So let's do a sample. This is a graph. And this is how science is different than math because our axes usually have some kind of label other than x and y. In this one, we have time on the x-axis and distance on the y-axis. So let me just put an x here and a y here just so you don't forget. But when we're in science, we usually don't put x and y. But we have to remember which one x and y is. So let's calculate the slope of the line. To do this, we need points on the line. So the first thing we need to do is locate 2 points on the line. Now, I know that your graph paper maybe doesn't have the lines come in very well. So hopefully we can find these points together. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in here. So what I want to do is take a look. This is a best fit line. What that means is there's data points here. Somebody took measurements about the distance of something, let's say it's the distance of a car at certain times. But what I want to do is not take these points, but take points on the line. So if I follow along, this point right here is really, really nice. The reason it's nice is because it falls right on a crisscross. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that point, put a point there, that's your point, and we're going to label it. That's going to be point 1. Okay, so in between 2 and 4 is 3, so that's 3. Whoops, this marker is kind of chunky, and my Y is 10. Hopefully you can see that. That's a 3. I'm going to go over it with black. 3 and a 10. So the X is a 3, the Y is a 10. Now I'm going to go along and try and find another point on the line that crosses a hash. I'm going to follow along the line. That could be one. I'm just going to go a little bit further. That's a little bit less crowdy. And this is a point right here. I'm going to label that one with a different color. Okay, maybe this point right here. Okay, and let's label that point. So I'm going to follow up. Okay, that's between 8 and 10, which is 9. And I always start on the X because X goes first. So I go up from the X, and then I follow over and find Y, which is 30. So there's my 2 points. And because this might be your first time, what you might want to do is call this number 1. So this is X1, Y1. If you want to write that over top of your point, you can. This is point 2. So this would be X2 and Y2. So now I'm going to write my formula down over here. Okay, and make the substitution to solve for slope. I'm going to write down the equation, y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And give yourself a lot of space. I'm moving the equation equal sign over here. And I'm going to draw in the line for the fraction. So I'm going to start with the y's. So I'm going to look at y2. I'm going to come over here. y2 is 30. Okay. And x2 is 9. So what you can do is you can actually write the point vertically. So 30 and 9, 30 and 9. Okay. And then put in your negatives or your minuses. All right. Now in this case, all of our values are positive. So I'm not going to use brackets. But in math class, if you have negative values, you might want to use brackets. I'll put them in just for good practice. Okay, so now this is my point number 1. I'm going to look over here. It's 3 and 10. So x is on the denominator, 3, 10 it goes on the numerator because that's the y. So if you want to go left to right and then go down up, that works. And now you do the math. And because it's BEDMAS, we always have to do the numerator and denominator first. So it's going to be 30 minus 10, which is 20, and then 9 minus 3, which is 6. Now, I know in math class, I think they want you to leave this in fractions, but I want this to be in a decimal. So this is where you're going to need your calculator, or I guess your phone. You're going to do 20 divided by 6. And I got 3.33333. And you don't need to write all those 3's, but you write a couple of them. Okay? Hopefully you guys can see that in the, maybe I'll move that over here, sorry. Okay? So let's answer my questions. This is calculate the slope of the line. Oh, there's my slope. So my slope equaled, and we're going to talk about this more later, but it's approximate. Maybe you've done rounding, okay? So it's approximately 3.3. Now, that would probably be good enough if you're in math class, but I have a second question at the top of the graph, and it says, what value does the slope represent? Okay, and this comes down to looking at what units are in the x and y. And I left them out on purpose because I didn't want to do too much at once. Okay, so what I want to do is let's take a look at that for a second. And if I look here at x, the unit is hours. So I'm actually going to put it on the denominator here. Okay, hours. I'm going to go over here and go, look at what were the units for y? It was kilometers. So if I look at the units of the slope are kilometers per hour. And what does that represent? Maybe you know when you're driving down the street, maybe you want to drive someday. Okay, that's speed. Okay, right? You see it as a speed limit sign on the street. So what value does the slope represent? The slope represents speed. And this is an important thing in science because we're not just finding slopes of lines. Those slopes of lines represent some relationship. And in this relationship, it's the kilometers per hour. Okay, so the slope represents speed. Okay, so now I want you to try the sheet, the worksheet, okay, where they give you a bunch of lines and you need to label the points and then calculate the slope. Okay, thanks, bye.